Hello there. Hi. Hello there. This is Paul Delegarza with High Performance Business Solutions. And I'd like to welcome you to the latest installment of our Mastering in Leadership. Today, we're going to be talking about mastering effective delegation for a streamlined success. I'd like to introduce you, first of all, to the basic concepts of effective delegation that are going to be incredibly instrumental in the effective implementation of high performance leadership. So let's get started. So, what we're talking about here is the importance of effective delegation. And what we're talking about here is that the reason we want to do something of this nature is to essentially allow the leader to distribute tasks and responsibilities, both tasks and responsibilities, authorities, so that you can accomplish number one, improved efficiency. Number two, so that you can empower your team members and in the process, freeing up a lot of your time so that you can do the more relevant things like strategic thinking, the general direction of the enterprise, and so forth. There are two critical steps to effective delegation. The first one is to make sure that you are emphasizing in your delegation that it's not just about distributing a task, but it is about fostering team growth. It's about fostering an engagement of the team into the overall mission. Sometimes the challenges that arise as a result of this not being done effectively is a direct product of disengaged players, people that frankly do not understand the actual mission itself, or worse yet, that we get to a point that the individual is only engaging in doing a task without understanding the overall purpose or the why of the task or the mission given by the leader. The key thing here is that we have to start with the most important aspect of effective delegation. And that aspect is clear communication. By far, it's got to be one of the most important elements so that you can, for starters, set the pattern and the parameters of what success looks like. The way you need to do that is to make sure that you have a clear conveyance of the objectives and the expectations that you have, but also any relevant information that that individual may require to accomplish the desired outcome. The other component is to make sure that you have clear conveyance in the deadlines and the quality standards that are associated with the actual delegated mission or task. Now, one of the things that sometimes leaders do not take into account, and either because they don't have the time, because of, frankly, last resort, or in some cases because of negligence, is to make sure that you're selecting the right person. It is incredibly important, as you can probably imagine, to select the right person for the right delegated task. This person has to have the right skills, the right experience, and the right workload so that they can accommodate what you're giving them to do without compromising what they already are responsible for. And frankly, in order for you to be able to really select the right person, you have to take into account what the strengths and skill sets are of that particular individual. And if there's any kind of weaknesses in the part of that particular team member, that you take them into account and anticipate how those weaknesses may impact the actual assigned task and the assigned mission. Once you do this, once you've established this clear process and you have been very, very clear and you've selected the right person, now it's on you. And it's on you to make sure that you are exercising the right trust, the right empowerment, both. So while you don't want to engage in micromanaging and just simply it doesn't function and it doesn't end well, what you want to definitely do is you want to give that individual a what I call within the framework autonomy. And what that means is that within the framework of the budget, the timelines, the resources, and the structure that you assign, that individual has been given the latitude necessary to be able to function and responsibly deal with unexpected things. And you have to make sure that you take into account that trusting your team will definitely create a very strong fabric of the culture, because you will be motivating your team, and it builds an element of confidence within the team. All right, so now we've gone through three critical components, right? We've selected the right person, we've been very clear on communication, and you are trusting and you're empowering. Now, what you have to make sure is that that individual has exactly the resources necessary and the support necessary for you to be able to expect that task or that mission to be accomplished and completed successfully. So each team member has to have access to all the resources, all the tools, all the contacts, all the materials that that person will require to achieve the goal. But also, you need to make sure that you make yourself very clearly available so that you can offer guidance when it's necessary and when it's needed. All right, so now you're well on your way to create the delegated task, but you still have a couple of steps that you have to accomplish. The other step that you have to take into account is that individual needs to know what success looks like. You need to make sure that you are clear on what the desired outcome looks like. Your team member is not a mind reader. They have absolutely no idea of what you want out of that delegated task unless you are explicit about the deadlines, the priorities, and this way, once you make all of these things clear in terms of what success looks like, what is the measure of the success of the team member, you will avoid misunderstandings that will be, if not done, they're going to create enormous amounts of time wastes, of resources lost. Okay, so now you've launched it. You have done all the steps that I've outlined. The actual task is well and on its way to being completed. And one of the things that we like to talk about is what we call milestone accountability. And the way to do that is by having feedback and check ins. You want to make sure that you are clear as a leader, that you are responsible for the successful outcome of that delegated task. Just because of the fact that you've delegated that to a team member doesn't mean that you are free, obviously, and most of you know this, if not all of you, that you are free from any level of accountability. Quite the contrary. It is important for you to know that the success or the failure of that particular task is on you as the leader. So, how do you go about ensuring that this takes place? Very simple. Establish what we call milestone accountability or check-in points. When you delegate the task, make sure that you establish with the individual that you're going to check with that person 4 or 5 times during the course of the trajectory of the development of the task or of the mission. And this way, you'll be able to determine where that individual should be in their progress to achieving the mission, achieving the task. Not only will that enable you to ensure that you anticipate any kind of potential problems because you'll know what progress your team member is making, but you'll be able to provide feedback and give that team member some guidance in terms of how to ensure the successful completion of the task. The key thing is that you also want to encourage the individual to communicate with you. I cannot tell you a number of times that I've seen people not connect with their leaders because they feel that the leader is going to judge them, that they're going to feel that the leader thinks that they are inept or incompetent or just simply mediocre. You don't want your team member to have that kind of sense of self. So, how to go about preempting that? Encourage the individual to reach out to you when necessary, but also to make sure that that person knows that they have the autonomy to be able to function within that framework of which we spoke earlier. Overall, that team member has a great deal of accountability. So you have to hold the individual accountable, right? But I want you to know that accountability begins at the very beginning of this process. Accountability is extremely important, but it begins when you actually begin the delegated process. In other words, You want to make sure that that team member is bought in. Not only is it the right person, that you've been very clear, that you're trusting, that you have the right resources, but that the team member is bought in and that they have a clear understanding of not only the checkpoints, but of the why. This includes also, once you have that, rewarding that individual on those checkpoints. You're doing fantastically well. Well done. This, the way you are going, we're going to actually accomplish this well before the deadline set. Or, you know, we need to actually work on a couple of things, because if we don't, I think we're not going to make the deadline, or we're not going to accomplish the task. And to do this constructively, because unfortunately, many people have a sense that accountability is, well, if the person does not do the job, boom, I'm going to perform a human sacrifice and he's done. That's not what accountability is about. Okay. Now, one of the things that that team member needs to feel is that not only is he going to have a delegated task, but that he will have the authority associated with the task, along with the things that he has to accomplish. So make sure that he has the authority and the decision-making power to make any call to ensure the successful outcome and completion of the task. Because when a team is empowered, they will have ownership of their work. And when they have ownership of the work, what happens is you have engagement, which translates to productivity, which translates to success. So, in the process, as you're doing the check ins, you want to make sure that you find the right balance between monitoring without micromanaging. Don't get into a hands on kind of situation where you're constantly saying, okay, what did you do? The check ins are the check ins. You just want to see how that person is doing. But at the same token, you want to make sure that he knows or she knows that you're there to support them. One thing that you have to anticipate, and you need to sit down and, when you delegate the task, talk to the individual team member so that they know that you have taken into account certain risks and contingencies that may be in possible. Okay. So you want to make sure that if there's a potential risk or an obstacle, try to anticipate that so that the team feels empowered and well informed. And again, as you do these things, that individual is going to feel incredibly empowered to actually accomplish the assigned task successfully. Another component about this whole process of delegated engagement is, of course, flexibility. There will be times when the plan of attack, the guidelines or the steps that you've identified that that team member should follow are not going to be the team's direction, simply because of unexpected things, unexpected circumstances. That individual needs to know that you are flexible as long as the pursuit of the desired outcome is constantly in mind. The last thing is appreciation and recognition. So if you have someone that is doing a really good job, begin the recognition during the course of your check-ins. Don't wait until it's completed. And of course, if that team or that team member has completed this successfully, please make it a point for them to know how much you appreciate it. Recognize often, recognize well, and you will have a very strong, high performance team. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and engage again in how you can become a better leader through effective delegation. This is Paul De La Garza with High Performance Business Solutions. Take care and be well.